Welcome to Conversations with Cox and Kielseth, and to be more specific, that is filmmaker Alex Cox and myself, film curator Pablo Kielseth. Alex will join us by phone from his home in Oregon, while I sneak away from my office to call him from one of the projection booths used by the International Film Series, which has been screening foreign and independent movies at CU Boulder since 1941. We will keep our chats to about 20 minutes as we discuss whatever movie-related topics grab our fancy. Thanks for joining us.
See, let's spread out so far and wide. Keep Manhattan, just give me the countryside. Pablo.
Alejandro.
¿Cómo andas?
I'm pretty good. How about yourself, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well indeed. Yes, I'm back in the cupboard.
Back in the cupboard,
but waiting for feedback from our audio files as to where I sound the best.
Well, you sound fine to me, sir. And as promised, I did revisit. Given that Ned Beatty just recently passed away, I've been meaning to revisit Network for a long time, and I saw it last Sunday.
And how was it?
It was just a great Blu-ray. I mean, you could see the grain, and the quality was amazing. It was actually better than I remembered, and it was really it's a very prescient film. I mean, I think at the time when I first saw it, I thought it was like a over the top satirical romp, and watching it now, it's not satirical at all. It's actually using it uses all the lingo that it goes to actual news sets, and it actually did basically predict the rise of Fox, which came out like 10 years later, in terms of this network that would make a lot of money from a bunch of reality TV type series and shows, and not to mention screaming TV commentators whose bread and butter is whipping up their audience into a rage. And but I was very impressed. Ned Beatty has over 4 decades of work under his belt. He made over 150 movies.
Wow!
But it was with Network that he got an Oscar nomination, and it was actually also because of Network that he said that an actor should never turn down any work, because on Network he only worked a day, and he got an Oscar nomination for it. Now, that being said, of course, most people know him. Or a great many do, from his very first feature debut on Deliverance, which is that's the kind of haunting role that definitely follows you throughout your lifetime. But
oh God, so that was his first feature acting role.
That was in 1972. But reading his obituary in the New York Times, I really have to admire him, because he, to quote him, he says, "Squeal like a pig. How many times has that been shouted, said, or whispered to me since then?" This is back in 1989. "I suppose when someone, invariably a man, shouts this at me, I am supposed to duck my head and look embarrassed at being recognized as the actor who suffered this ignominy. But I feel only pride about being a part of the story, which the director John Boorman turned into a film classic." So, that's like good for him for holding.
And it's an amazing film. I mean, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember it being very impressed by Deliverance.
Yeah. And again, I mean, he was happy being a character. He was a hard-working actor. And I mean, he kind of credits it to the fact that, I guess he got married. He was married 4 times and had 8 kids, which is a common reason that he gives for the fact that he was always working. Hats off to Ned Beatty. Oh, one more quote from Ned Beatty. He said, "Most preachers are frustrated actors, and most actors are frustrated preachers." Now, you're an actor, so could we say the same for you? Are you a potentially a frustrated preacher?
Well, I think I'm actually licensed to commit marriage. I have somewhere my Universal Life Church qualification.
Well, there it is.
For which I paid $10, and I'm a colonel in the Universal Life Church, and I could actually perform weddings if anybody needs it done. Just something to think about.
We should have told Jason about that before he.
I know, it's tragic. Bitterly regrets it. But I wanted to talk to you on this particular podcast about the persistence of memory.
Yes.
Because what impressed me, what has impressed me, is how I can still remember theme tunes of TV shows that I saw when I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
And I can still remember the song, the music, the lyrics. And how can that be? That's so weird. I mean, because I don't remember hymns, speaking of the Preacher Man, I don't remember hymns that we sung. And there was one hymn that I remember the name of, Gladly My Little Cross-Eyed Bear, but that was because of the irony of the name of the song. But in general, I can remember vividly these. Did you have a series that was called Champion the Wonder Horse?
I am not familiar with. It sounds like it could be a thing but I'm not familiar with it personally. No.
It was on British TV, and when I was really little, and it was. It must have been a Canadian show. Perhaps like Whirlybirds, that we got in England, and we all thought were American shows, but they were really Canadian,
Uh-huh.
But Champion the Wonder Horse was like a streak of lightning flashing across the sky, like an engine arrow twanging from the bow, like a mighty cannonball he seems to fly. You'll hear about him everywhere you go. The time will come when everyone will know the name of Champion the Wonder Horse, except of course everyone doesn't know the name of Champion the Wonder Horse, so it's rather presumptuous song. But why do I still remember that? 60 years later.
I mean, one guess that I have is repetition, because if you were watching a TV show, there's various episodes within the show. So, and if you're a kid and you're
oh yeah,
and you're interested in it, like when you say that you don't remember some of the hymns from church, well, you probably weren't very interested in those. But as a kid watching a show that you're actually primed for, that you're pumped for, and then you watch
about a Wonder Horse in the American West, who wouldn't be interested in that? You'd be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously all kinds of commercial jingles that I'm sure are still running through all kinds of well, for those of us that grew up when there were only 3 channels, I mean, the repetition of hearing a lot of these commercials definitely, pressed itself upon us. But no, I'm with you on the shows, I think, but I also think there's a power to having a catchy tune, and a short catchy tune that definitely gives it sort of an edge, for sure.
Well, what can you remember from far back in the mists of time?
Well, when you gave me a heads up that you wanted to talk, do some karaokeing of the of TV single, which made me nervous, because you've got some good pipes, but I do not. The very first show that came to my mind was a show that beloved by the both of us. You even wrote a book on it. And it is, of course,
The Prisoner.
The Prisoner. And it goes on like that. But what was that
was really good.
Well, what was actually fascinating to me, however, is that when I looked it up, that song was the score was by Ron Grenier, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly.
Or Grainer or Grenier, yeah.
Yeah, but what astonished me was that, so The Prisoner, the TV show, came out in 1967. But that same person is responsible for another tune that I also had stuck in my head for another British TV show. Doctor Who, which came out in 1963.
No way, he wrote the Doctor Who theme too?
The same guy who put the Prisoner song in my head forever also put the Doctor Who theme song in my head forever.
Yeah. Wow, that's really...
Same guy.
That's amazing. I'm very... I'm surprised I didn't know that. I should have known that for the Prisoner book, because that's quite a bit of... wow. Yeah, that's most impressive.
I'm surprised I didn't know it too. And mind you, he was pretty, he did a lot of stuff in between 1963 and 1967, a lot of movies, and he went all over the place. He did satires, ballets, he did psycho killer movies, and he also did I think To Sir with Love. That was in 67 as well.
How interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Now, you had a bunch, though. Did you have some Westerns in there to toss in?
Well, I was thinking about, there was in the 1960s, the American Western on television was represented by a series of shows about ranches, cattle ranches.
Yep.
There was Bonanza, there was the High Chaparral, the Big Valley with Barbara Stanwyck was the rancher.
Yeah.
And there was the Virginian, where Lee J. Cobb was the rancher. And the Virginian originally, it was very traditional, very, just another Bonanza ripoff, really. And it had a very kind of standard cowboy theme at the beginning, like that, like an Elmer Bernstein score for the Big Country or for the Magnificent Seven, that kind of music. And
yeah.
But we were getting into the second half of the 60s, and they must have been into like the third season of the Virginian. And it's interesting because these were like all corporate Westerns. They were all from the point of view of the rancher, trying to keep out the rustler and the granger and the this and the that, And they decided that we've got to give the series a shake-up and make it more relevant, as if you could. So what they settled on was a new title sequence and a new theme. And the person they hired to write the theme was Ennio Morricone.
Ah, well, there you go.
And so he did like an Italian Western knockoff. He did like a it was much more, it wasn't up to the good, the bad, and the ugly or for a few dollars more, but it was definitely Morricone,
right?
And that was their attempt to revamp the series. Was essentially like putting different hood ornament on a car. Huh. But I thought that was interesting because the Morricone takeover of the Virginian, I think it only lasted a season and then they canceled the show.
Oh well, that's too bad.
Yeah. So I remember that. And then I also remember one other song. Obviously, I remember many stupid songs like the Mr. Ed theme. Who could forget the Mr. Ed theme? But the one I really love is a Western series called Branded.
I've never seen it.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
Never seen it.
Oh, well, actually, it's worth seeing for the title sequence. I don't know if the episodes are very good.
What year was that?
Mid-60s.
Mid-60s, okay.
Mid-60s. So it was part of a sort of a sequence of things like Steve McQueen in Wanted Dead or Alive, and Richard Boone in Half Gone Will Travel. And this was Chuck Connors, who also later played the Rifleman, an even worse series. But in Branded, the conceit was that he'd been like a loyal officer, the only person to survive the massacre of wherever, and but he was unjustly accused of running away and was like cashiered out of the army, and so then he had to spend the series making up for this, all of which was explained in the theme song, which was all but one man died there at Bitter Creek, and they said he ran away. Branded, scorned as the one who ran. What do you do when you're branded and you know you're a man? Wherever you go for the rest of your life, you must prove you're a man. Boom. And that was the setup. It's a great setup, right? And you see, and in the title sequence, you see Chuck Connors getting his epaulets ripped off and his sword broken in half and being forced to march out into the desert, and, leaving the fort behind. And, so, but the song, why do I remember that song?
Well, I mean, humans are story-driven people. And as you just mentioned, everything for Branded, like the whole setup is right there in the song. It's like Gilligan's Island, like everything is right there in the song. It's like, all you got to do is watch one episode, and the song tells you exactly what happens, who these characters are, how they got to the island, and boom.
The millionaire and his wife. The move. Yep. Yeah. No, you're right.
But I mean,
and Beverly Hillbillies. Beverly Hillbillies tells a complicated story very simply, in the opening credits. So yeah,
that was not one that I watched. I was weaned on Star Trek, which the original from 1967. And what's fascinating is that as soon as I even say the words, I already hear the whoosh, and then space, the final frontier, and then it goes on. But what I thought was fascinating, and I actually didn't know this until I just looked it up. I think it was today, that with Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry, sneaky little bastard, he actually knew enough to write some lyrics for the whole, like the stuff that follows that prologue.
Oh.
And so, like, if you get a songbook, you're actually going to get lyrics. And I saw this because on YouTube, I saw that Jack Black and Tenacious D, they do their version of Beyond the Rim of the Starlight, because that's how it starts. It's like, beyond the rim of the starlight, my love is wandering, and it goes on. But the whole thing is that Roddenberry knew that if he wrote some lyrics down, he would get half the royalties. So
great.
Cheeky. I mean,
how clever. What a clever person.
Well, so this actually dovetails perfectly into the other song that I have to put. If I have to put like 3 TV shows that definitely are in just marinated into my consciousness, I'll say 4, because Doctor Who, The Prisoner, Star Trek, but the other one is MASH.
Huh.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you ever saw MASH, but the thing is,
oh yeah.
For the movie, which came out in 1970, they had it's kind of fascinating because Robert Altman basically, he wanted to have this really, he wanted a solemn song in terms of its tone, but then he wanted it to be like the lyrics to be just absolutely, stupid. And he actually said that he wanted like the stupidest song ever written. And he actually tried his own hand at it, and it wasn't stupid enough. So then he basically said, oh, well, you know what? I've got a kid, like his own kid, his son, who's a total idiot. And he basically put him to the task. So he put his 14-year-old kid to writing the song, Mike Altman. And Mike Altman wrote it in 5 minutes. And then Mandel was the one who then later added the melody to it. But so the kid wrote the song, the lyrics, in 5 minutes. And it's absolutely insane. Like Robert Altman made Robert Altman made $70,000 for directing the movie MASH. And his kid went on to make $1 million from the song,
from the licensing of the lyrics
to MASH, because he wrote the lyrics, and then it got covered by a lot of different bands, and then royalties, etc. It's just insane.
Well, and as far as I can see, there are these 2 collection agencies, whatever they are, BMI and ASCAP, which collect on behalf of composers. And unlike the movie business, I mean, they are like really efficient.
Yeah.
And so if you imagine, if you were in the Clash, imagine the royalties that will be coming in. But even like for musicians that we know, like Xander and Dan Wall and stuff, there's money coming in all the time from things that you've written.
Well, I was just listening to Danny Elfman on another podcast, just a few weeks ago, and he said that the absolutely inadvertently smartest thing that he did when he wrote the theme song for The Simpsons was that he added the words, The Simpsons. And just by writing those two words down, he is now getting, checks because he is credited as a writer for lyrics for the song. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So anyway, so our minds are thoroughly populated by these commercial endeavors that were embarked upon by people long dead.
Yeah. Well, the two other things.
Not Matt Groening, obviously, but
yeah. Well, I mean, the two other things I'll add about MASH is just that, I think the song lyrics actually play in the movie, but not on the TV show because the lyrics are pretty, kind of, if you're not realizing that they were.
Suicide is painless. It brings on many changes. And I can take or leave it if I please. Right?
See, you remember. Yeah.
Yeah. And he wrote those in 5 minutes. Good for him. That was good.
Yeah. But the thing is that the movie, as I was seeing on this, on some link somewhere, the guy was saying, the emphasis of the movie was that it's a comedy about death, whereas the thing about the TV show is that it's a comedy about living. And so the TV show had to scrub out the lyrics so that you only have the melody, right?
Yeah.
So that which all kind of makes sense. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that it was like maybe a month ago that Ricky Gervais and Sam Harris were talking about the meaning of dreams, and something that they brought up that I thought was really fascinating was how jokes in a dream don't translate. In other words, if you're asleep and there's a joke within the dream and you wake up and you tell it to someone, it's just utter nonsense. But music translates. Like if you have a tune and you wake up to it and you jot it down, which is Keith Richards. Like Keith Richards, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Famously, he was, he fell asleep and those main chords came to him in his sleep, and he got up, he wrote them down, went back to sleep, and then when he woke up, he saw the chords, played them. They put them on a B-side, ended up being a huge hit. Now they've been playing it all their lives for their as their last song. But the fascinating thing to me, and this gets to your core point of like how maybe potentially brief musical snippets, there's almost something primordial about them that gets lodged in our brain, and it actually crosses that brain barrier blur. It's just like the subconscious to the conscious. It's like that's how deep it is. That's how resonant it is. Just the power of music.
I entirely concur with you. I think that's definitely there's definitely something in what you say.
Interesting stuff. Well, we've cleared past
run our course.
Yeah, we've done our course.
Over the yardarm.
So we'll figure something out for next week. And I do want to just quickly a quick word to our listeners. Every now and then, you might notice that with our podcast, that Alex and I have, we do not have sponsors. We do not have advertisers. We are not beholden to anyone.
We can say whatever we want.
Well, and sometimes we can not say anything at all, which is to say when, for example, last week, Jason took a week off, who's our tech guru who does all the hard work behind the curtain. And I kind of forgot to mention that. So at the same time, every now and then, Alex and I, we're going to punt. And but we'll always come back, and just don't panic if you miss a week or two. It might happen.
No, I would panic. I would 2 weeks. Man, I would be seriously panicking if we missed 2 weeks. Because we got to get to 100.
Okay.
We got to get to 100 podcasts.
I suppose the only way to do that is to keep putting some stuff out there, but I don't want to put that kind of pressure on our necks just yet, Alex. Although I understand.
No, we got to do 100, because when you go to 100, you got $1 million.
I was not privy to that little podcast.
Oh no, it's true. I saw that just the other day, that if you do 100 podcasts, you get $1 million. It's something from like George Soros or the Clinton Foundation or something, but it's guaranteed.
Sounds more like something you'd read on the back of a Bazooka Joe bubblegum wrapper. I'd say.
I was just reading about the artist who did Bazooka Joe.
No way.
And the guy who wrote the Bazooka Joe jokes. His name was Len Morris? I was just reading about him earlier because there was a Mars Attacks connection to Bazooka Joe. They were all published by Topps.
Oh, well, now that makes sense. That would, because they're in the same family. Sure.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right.
Well,
and I look forward to talking to you next week, sir.
I look forward to it too. Cheers, mate.
And cut. Okay, that's a wrap.
Thanks again for joining Alex Cox and myself today. I'd like to thank Jason Phelps for handling the audio and Ted Thacker for letting us use the intro to his song, The Ballad of Slim Cessna, for the musical cues that bookend these conversations.
If you'd like to drop us a line with any suggestions or comments, you can send us an email at pablo@internationalfilmseries.com. And if you drop us a note, Alex and I will do our best to reply to any emails. Thanks for listening.
Don't forget to go out there and watch movies in a larger-than-home venue. It's what brings us all together to see movies the way they were meant to be seen. On the big screen, as we sit next to strangers, neighbors, and friends.